Our next speaker is Dan Tuten, who will present on CMMC compliance for laboratory companies, safeguarding sensitive data in research and testing. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, and thank you to my colleagues. Frankly, ABSA set me up. The preceding speaker just set me up for what I need to talk to you guys about. The Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification from the Department of Defense is a new regulation that the last part of the regulation was signed into effect on, we're not going because I was going the wrong way. It is a methodology for potential contractors with the Department of Defense pre-award. So in other words, before you get awarded work from the DoD, you will have to participate in the CMMC model. However, if you already have work, we'll talk about those as we go through the information. This has been put into place because of some analysis that was done over the course of time. They needed a better way to protect both federal contracting information as well as controlled unclassified information. So the way they're going about it is they're insisting that all contractors, if you're a mom and pop laboratory, if you're Pfizer, doesn't matter, everybody has to comply with the same cybersecurity standards to ensure that any information that they are working with from the DoD is going to be protected. And they have to show that they have this prior to having work awarded to them. So I'm not going to go through the timeline because I'm very conscious of the information or the time constraints that we have. However, most importantly, September 10th, it was signed for the last part of the regulation to go into effect. It goes into effect on November 10th. So you got about 2 weeks to get ready. Merry Christmas. So the good thing, though, is we are going to be in what they're referring to as a rolling implementation. So the first part goes into effect on November 10th, 2025. At that time, a contracting officer can either modify a contract to include the CMMC language, or if there's an award that's going to be done on or after November 10th, they can insert the language from that date onward. They don't have to wait an additional period. November 10th is the date that it occurs. However, in this rolling format, they're only going to insist on level 1 and level 2 CMMC certification. We'll get into details about that as we go along. And then starting in 26, the third-party assessments come into play. Starting in 27, the Tier 3 comes into play. And during the course of this, we're also going through multiple revisions of the standard against which you're going to be judged. But at least for now, we do have this kind of first year of implementation where it will just be levels 1 and 2. Talking about the levels, starting from the bottom up, there's a set of only 15 controls. They're relatively simple to accomplish. Most organizations, if you're not doing this, you're going to be out of business tomorrow anyway because you're not protecting your data from any of the bad guys that are out there. So level 1 is relatively easy to do. It's a self-evaluation. So you take these controls, you say, yes, I'm doing that, yes, I'm doing that, yes, I'm doing that. You insert it into the database that they have for DoD, and suddenly you're level 1 certified. You can attain any contract with Department of Defense. These are probably those types of organizations that are doing cleaning for DoD or deliveries for DoD or things of that nature. They're not going to have sensitive information. Level 2 is much more about it starts to have some of the sensitive information, but not a lot. Level 3 actually requires DoD assessors to come in and double check your cybersecurity. Looking at these from a different perspective, I added my own labels to level 2 because they actually split level 2 into 2 parts. The first part is also much like level 1, it's a self-assessment, and I'm referring to that as 2A. And so 2B is the level that has to be done by a third-party assessor. So you can't do a self-assessment on the third-party evaluation criteria if they insist for you to have this 2B reference. So for ease, we're going to talk about 2B or not 2B. So in the standards, what they've done is they've looked at the controlled unclassified information that is posted on the CUI website, and there are 5 types of criteria that are used by DoD that could determine that you're in this 2B category. And I'm going to go through detailed conversation, but understand that for the most part, you're probably not going to be doing nuclear work, probably not doing nuclear information defense work, so those 2 are off the table right off the bat. Controlled technical information, this is the most likely category in which any lab will be working for DoD. Computer software executable code, specific protocols that you're using in the lab, specific details like we're being discussed in some of the other sessions that we've had here today, engineering drawings, specific details about how agents interact with each other. Those types of things would fall into this controlled technical category. Critical infrastructure is probably not likely. This is more like explosive, hazardous material, chemicals, etc. Some of our labs may be doing that type of work, in which case you would go under the critical infrastructure category of information and require that 2B third-party certification. Privileged safety. Privileged safety information is mostly about safety investigations. So if this isn't the type of stuff that your lab or your organization does, this isn't going to be what's going to require you to get that 2B certification. Finally, the contract officer can override. He can say, well, I know it's not technically one of these other categories, but I think we're going to operate as if it's that higher level of sensitivity because the general that he's working for wants it that way. That's always a possibility. So we've got some good news and bad news relevant to CMMC. Good news. First of all, they have a very detailed capability within CMMC called scoping. So if you don't have a need for all of your folks to have access to the controlled unclassified information, then don't. The less people you have that are participating in having access to this information, the less people you have to have vetting of the training that they're participating in, that they're all using encrypted devices, that they're only accessing from systems that have the appropriate security, et cetera. So through scoping, you can limit the people, you can limit the systems, you can even limit sections of your network that are going to have access to it. If you have subcontractors that work for you and there's no need for them to have access to the higher level information, then don't have access to it. And that eliminates them from having to have the same level of certification that you have. You can also limit times when information is available. All of these are methods to help limit the areas that are going to be checked out by anybody that comes in to audit you. Other work helps. So if you're participating in the cybersecurity framework, if you're ISO 27001, if you've got a SOC 2 certification, if you're a cloud provider that has a FedRAMP certification, all of those things are work that has already gone before that you can take advantage of that previous work. That being said, there'll be a slide later on where I say, yeah, the work helps, but you still have to produce the evidence again for your CMMC certification. Another piece of good news for this first year, the max is 2A. There's no 2Bs unless the contracting officer specifically states that. But according to DoD so far, they're not going to insist on 2B during this first period unless it's truly sensitive work. And the 2A, the self-evaluation of all these controls, could be there in perpetuity if the work that you're doing doesn't rise to that 2B level. It also gives you time to get ready for that third-party assessment. If you go through and have a consulting organization assist you, or you have your own technology staff that can help you get to that 2A self-certification, you're golden. You're ready for that third-party assessment to come in and get you there. And you have even more time because of the rolling out. If you're doing truly sensitive work and you need to be at that third tier, you've got 2 chances, your self-evaluation and the third-party evaluation, to make sure that when the third-party or level 3 DoD assessors come in, you're ready for them. There's also an entire ecosystem of help. They've been working on this for years. This is not a brand new concept to get this in place. That timeline that I went past most of it, it actually started back in 2013, 2014, building this ecosystem. So there's third-party organizations for assessing purposes. There's registered providers or registered practitioners that can provide you consulting services to help you get ready. There's certified assessors, there's certified professionals, there's both registered professionals and registered professionals advanced, all available through the cyberab.org, where you can find a marketplace to find folks to assist you. And it's possible, it's very possible to attain both Tier 1 and Tier 2A with your internal staff. The NIST standards are available by which you're going to be judged. There are some bad news though. The alternative assessments, the SOC 2, 27001, et cetera, you can't get credit for having done those things, but you can reuse the evidence as part of being prepared for your own assessment. More bad news, it's going to cost you some. Even if you're a small organization, there's going to have to be an investment in ensuring that you have sufficient security in place so that you can get awarded these DoD contracts. But there's a lot of variables involved. I can't give you a window of information without talking specifics about your organization, but I'm happy to talk individually if you'd like to chat further. There's also more bad news. If you already have a DoD contract, you don't have to wait until November 10th for somebody to come in and audit you. If they decide to do it tomorrow, you're already on the hook. The language is already in your contract. It has been there for at least the last 5 to 6 years. And someone reviewed that contract and didn't realize what the DFARS clause in there was talking about, and you could still be held accountable. There have been multiple false claims acts that have been processed, millions in settlement that have to been paid because they weren't abiding by the contract language that's already present. This is more of a warning than really bad news. Only organizations that are in the CyberAB marketplace are ones that you should work with. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, they're vetted by the CyberAB to do the kind of work that they're doing, so there's less likely chance of you getting a questionable organization helping you. But also, they're listed there for a reason, so that you know that you've got a reliable resource. Potential future considerations. I didn't mention earlier, but I actually retired last month from the Federal Select Agent Program. I was their Associate Director for Informatics and built the Select Agent portal that many of our Select Agent entities use. Have made sure that that was secure for the last 7 years. And so one of the things that I've seen over the course of my career is that things that happen in DoD have a tendency to move over to federal, civil agencies. So if you're not doing work for DoD now, but you're doing work for CDC or NIH or any of these other federal organizations, it's probably going to come that you're going to have to be CMMC compliant. So your call to action for me, if you currently or anticipate DoD work, get working with somebody that is CMMC knowledgeable. Like I mentioned, the cyberab.org has a marketplace. You can, of course, use my slides to contact me for further information. And if you're unsure of what other cybersecurity standard you might want to do, the SOC 2, et cetera, CMMC is a nice Goldilocks kind of set. It's specifically tailored to be enough cybersecurity for small organizations as well as large organizations to not be too much of a burden from being placed on you from government, but it will get you mostly secure in conducting your day-to-day business. And with that, here are all of my contact places. You can contact me by email, phone, and I'm even in the ABSA how space. Not that I figured out how to use it very well yet, but I'm in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, and all of you guys for such an informative presentations that we had today. We will now start the Q&A portion of the session. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, please do so now. just click on the Slido in the conference app or click here to ask the speakers questions on their virtual platform. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for. So let's get started.
Daniel, does CMMC apply to organizations that work with CUI? Can you expound on what constitutes CUI and how material becomes CUI?
Sure. Is it on? Okay. Thank you for the question. CUI is controlled unclassified information. It is controlled out of, I forget the office right off the top of my head, but there is a website. If you just search for CUI, you can go to the website and see all of the types of CUI that is present. In general, CUI is designated by the owner of the data. The data owner makes a determination that this is controlled unclassified information and the types that will be applied. CUI is used throughout all of government. CMMC is only applicable to the DoD at this point. So it's going to be governed under what are referred to as the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation System, DFARS. And so that's the regulatory authority to put it in the DoD contracts. All of the rest of the agencies use the standard FAR for their capabilities. So CMMC will not be applicable at this time for non-DoD agencies.
Daniel, what is the timeline you anticipate for CMMC requirements to hit CDC or the Select Agent Program?
Well, interestingly, within the Federal Select Agent regulations currently, there is a very small paragraph. It's, I don't know, half a page in the regulation itself. And when I was at the Federal Select Agent Program, there was already discussion on a similar set of cybersecurity requirements to what CMMC has become, being adopted by the Federal Select Agent Program. That being said, it got no further than discussion at this point. But if I were to guess at a timeline, we're probably within 5 years of seeing something similar for civil agencies as to include the Select Agent Program if they choose to go down that path. That being said, President Trump has issued an executive order that says thou shalt not do any additional regulatory requirements unless you give up 10 of your current regulations. So they've got to remove some regulations if they want to add to the regulations. So the most likely scenario, rather than adding a new regulation, is simply for an organization, HHS as a whole, could easily say, we're adopting this DFARS regulation and abiding by that DFARS regulation rather than creating our own. That would be a much shorter path. So keep your eye on the news, but realistically, 5 years or less.
Thank you. That's it for today for questions. And please, everybody, give a round of applause to all the speakers. Okay, thank you so much.